It all began on a night no one could have imagined. Picture this. A man with more money than he could ever spend. The kind of wealth people dream about, but never touch. He owned private jets, sprawling estates, entire companies. From the outside, his life looked untouchable. Perfect even. But perfection is often nothing more than a mask, hiding the cracks that no one dares to look closely at. Now here's the shocking part. This man, a billionaire respected in business circles and adored by the public, would find himself struggling for his very life in the dark, unforgiving waters of a river. And the person responsible wasn't a stranger, wasn't a business rival, wasn't even an enemy. It was his wife. Yes, you heard that right. The woman who stood by his side at charity events, the woman who smiled for the cameras with him, the woman who swore to love him until death did them part. She was the one who shoved him to the edge of death. What could drive someone to betray the person they vowed to love? Was it hatred? Was it jealousy? Or was it something even colder? Greed. But before we go any further, if this is your first time in Top Core YouTube channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Stories like this are told here every day. Real American-inspired storytelling full of love, hate, and shocking betrayals you won't hear anywhere else. Now let's continue. The man at the center of this storm was Daniel Harrington, a self-made billionaire. Daniel had clawed his way up from nothing. He was raised in a modest town in Oklahoma, where his father worked in a steel plant and his mother cleaned houses to keep food on the table. From an early age, Daniel swore he would never let poverty define him. He studied harder than everyone else, worked longer hours, and eventually built a company that revolutionized renewable energy. By his late 40s, he wasn't just wealthy, he was powerful. But with wealth comes temptation, and with power comes enemies. Strangely, Daniel's greatest enemy wasn't in a boardroom. It was sleeping right beside him every night. Her name was Cassandra Harrington, a woman as beautiful as she was cunning. She wasn't with Daniel when he was poor. No, Cassandra came into his life after the empire was already built. She loved luxury, adored the cameras, and knew how to charm every room she walked into. For years, Daniel believed she was his soulmate. What he didn't see was the storm brewing beneath her perfect smile. Cassandra didn't just want the billionaire lifestyle. She wanted to own it, to control it. In her eyes, Daniel's existence was a constant reminder that the empire wasn't hers. And if he disappeared, well, billions of dollars would suddenly be left in her care. But here's the twist. Cassandra wasn't the only woman in that house. There was also Grace, the maid. A quiet, hard-working woman in her mid-30s, Grace was the type of person nobody paid much attention to. She ironed clothes, cleaned floors, and served drinks at Daniel's parties. To Cassandra, she was invisible, just another servant in the shadows. But to Daniel, Grace was different. She wasn't just an employee. Over the years, he'd noticed her loyalty, her honesty, her quiet strength. He trusted her more than he realized, and that trust would soon save his life. The betrayal happened late one evening. Daniel had returned from a high-profile charity gala, one of those events where everyone pretends to care about saving the world while wearing million-dollar outfits. Cassandra played her part flawlessly, smiling at Daniel in public, laughing at his jokes. But behind closed doors, her true self revealed itself. That night, she lured him to the riverside under the pretense of a private talk. The moon was high, the air was cold, and Daniel, exhausted from the night, had no idea what was about to unfold. Cassandra's words began sweet, talk of their future, their legacy, even children. But then, in an instant, her tone shifted. She accused him of hiding money, of keeping secrets, of being unfaithful. Daniel was stunned. None of it was true, but the rage in her eyes wasn't about truth. It was about something else, something darker. Before Daniel could make sense of it, Cassandra shoved him, hard. He stumbled, lost his balance, and in seconds he was plunging into icy waters. The river swallowed him whole, dragging him under like a merciless beast. From the bank, Cassandra stood motionless, her face lit by moonlight. No screams, no panic, no attempt to save him, only cold silence. And then she walked away. What Cassandra didn't know was that someone else had seen everything. Grace, the maid, had followed them at a distance, sensing something was wrong. And when she saw Daniel's body vanish beneath the waves, her instincts told her one thing: she couldn't let him die. That moment, the moment when a billionaire's life rested not in the hands of doctors, lawyers, or bodyguards, but in the hands of a maid society ignored. That's where this story truly begins. The river was merciless. Daniel's body slammed against hidden rocks as the current dragged him downstream. Every time he tried to surface, waves crashed over him, stealing his breath. His suit, once tailored and immaculate, now felt like chains pulling him deeper into the abyss. For the first time in decades, Daniel felt powerless. All his billions, all his influence, every ounce of respect he'd earned meant nothing against the raging current. In that moment, he wasn't a billionaire. He was just a man fighting to survive. As water filled his lungs, fragments of memory flashed before him. His father's calloused hands, his mother's tired face after a long day of scrubbing floors, his younger self promising that he would rise above it all. And then Cassandra's face, the woman he thought loved him, her eyes colder than the river itself as she shoved him into darkness. Daniel's body grew weaker. His limbs ached. Part of him wanted to give up, to let the water win. But deep down, another voice roared, "No. This isn't how it ends." Unseen from above, Grace had already thrown herself into the night. She didn't hesitate. She wasn't trained for rescues. She didn't know if she'd survive. But she knew one thing. If she let Daniel die, she would carry that burden forever. The water bit into her skin as she swam. She wasn't strong like Daniel's bodyguards. She wasn't rich. But Grace had grit, and sometimes grit is the only thing that keeps a person alive. She reached him just as his body went limp, his eyes rolling back. Wrapping her arms around him, she kicked furiously, dragging him toward the shore. Minutes felt like hours. The river fought her every stroke. Her muscles screamed for relief, but Grace refused to let go. Inch by inch, she pulled Daniel out of the water and onto the muddy bank. He wasn't breathing. His lips were blue, his chest still. Panic surged through her. She pressed her hands on his chest, pushing hard. Once, twice, again. She screamed his name, though she knew he couldn't hear her. And then at last, a miracle. Daniel coughed, water pouring from his mouth as his body convulsed back to life. Grace collapsed beside him, tears streaming down her face. She had saved him, but neither of them knew that the real battle had only just begun. Far away, Cassandra was already rehearsing her story. To the world, she would be the grieving widow. But in reality, she was waiting for billions to transfer into her control. And if Daniel wanted to reclaim his life, expose her betrayal, and protect the empire he built, he would need more than money. He would need allies. He would need cunning. And above all, he would need the one person no one ever expected: Grace. Grace sat on the cold ground, her clothes soaked and clinging to her body, her chest heaving from the struggle with the river. Beside her lay Daniel, coughing weakly, his breaths shallow but steady enough to prove he was alive. The night air was thick with the smell of wet earth and the distant hum of crickets. For a moment, everything was quiet, too quiet, except for the pounding of Grace's heart in her ears. She stared at the man she had just dragged back from death. To the world, Daniel Harrington was a symbol of power, the kind of man who had everything. But here, now, stripped of strength and fortune, he was fragile, human, just a man gasping for air on the muddy riverbank. Grace's hands trembled as she reached for him again, brushing wet hair from his forehead. "Mr. Harrington, Daniel, can you hear me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. He stirred, groaning, his eyes fluttering open for a second before closing again. He was alive, but barely. And that's when the weight of the moment crashed down on her. Grace realized she was holding a secret that could cost her everything. If Cassandra found out Daniel survived, Grace's life would be in danger. Cassandra was ruthless, and Grace had no illusions about what that woman was capable of. Tonight had proved it. If Cassandra could push her own husband into a river without blinking, what would she do to a maid who dared to interfere? Grace looked back at the rushing water, still furious, still swallowing anything in its path. She thought of running. She thought of walking away, pretending she had seen nothing. No one would know. People like her, maids, cleaners, the invisible ones, were never part of the story. No one expected her to be. But Grace knew herself too well. She could not leave him there. Her conscience wouldn't allow it. She stood, her legs shaking, and looked up at the starless sky. "God, why me?" she whispered. "Why now?" But no answer came. Only the sound of Daniel's ragged breathing. Grace had always been a survivor. Born in a small Mississippi town, she grew up in poverty, raised by her grandmother after her parents abandoned her. She knew hunger. She knew hard work. She knew what it felt like to be invisible. That invisibility followed her into adulthood, even when she moved to the city and found work cleaning mansions like Daniel's. People like Cassandra never saw her. To them, she was just a shadow moving through the house, picking up after them. But Daniel had noticed. He remembered her name. He thanked her after dinners. Once, when her son was sick and she asked for time off, he gave her the whole week with pay. That kindness mattered. And tonight, as she looked at his broken body, Grace realized she owed him more than silence. She had a choice to make: walk away, save herself, and let Cassandra's story of widowhood become the truth, or risk her life to protect the man who had built his empire from nothing. Her heart was pounding as the choice settled in her chest like fire. Grace wasn't the kind of woman to run. She wasn't raised that way. If she could survive hunger, abandonment, and a world that tried to break her at every turn, then she could face Cassandra's wrath. She bent down, sliding her arms under Daniel's shoulders. "Come on, sir. I'm not letting you die tonight." It was no easy task. Daniel was tall, muscular, and heavy with water. Grace strained, her back aching, her knees buckling, but she managed to drag him farther from the river toward the safety of the woods. Every step was a battle, but determination fueled her muscles more than strength. By the time she reached a small clearing beneath the trees, she collapsed beside him, drenched in sweat. Daniel was still unconscious, but his breathing was steadier now. Grace knew she needed to keep him hidden. If Cassandra came looking, if anyone from that house found them here, it would all be over. Hours seemed to pass as Grace sat there, trembling in the dark, keeping watch over the billionaire. She thought about Cassandra, the gleam in that woman's eyes, the cruelty in her smile. Grace had always suspected Cassandra was dangerous. There was a bitterness in her, a venom that spread through every word she spoke. But Grace had never imagined she would take it this far. Now Grace carried the truth, and with truth came danger. At dawn, the woods began to stir with the sound of birds, their songs piercing the heavy silence. Daniel groaned again, his eyes opening slightly. This time, his gaze lingered on Grace, confusion swimming in his expression. Where am I?" he rasped. His voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "You're safe," Grace said softly, leaning closer. "But you need to stay quiet. You nearly drowned. I pulled you out." His brow furrowed, and then, like a flood, the memory returned. The cold water, the rocks, Cassandra's hands pushing him away. His breath quickened, panic flashing in his eyes. Grace gripped his arm firmly. "Don't move. You're weak. And if anyone sees you, it'll be the end." Daniel stared at her, his lips trembling as he whispered the words he could hardly believe. "She tried to kill me." Grace's jaw tightened. "Yes, and if you want to live, you have to trust me. No one else. Just me." For the first time in his life, Daniel had no power, no control. He was forced to rely entirely on someone society dismissed as unimportant. And Grace. She felt the weight of that trust like a burden and an honor all at once. As the morning sun broke through the trees, Grace's decision hardened into resolve. She would hide him. She would protect him. She didn't know how. She didn't know for how long. But she would. Because deep down, Grace understood something Daniel didn't yet see. Cassandra wouldn't stop. If she suspected Daniel was alive, she would finish what she started. Grace wasn't just protecting a man. She was protecting the truth. She was protecting justice. And for the first time in her life, she realized she was standing in the middle of a story that could change everything. The maid, once invisible, was now the only thing standing between life and death, power and ruin, justice and betrayal. Her choice had been made, and the consequences would follow her forever. Cassandra sat by the window of their suburban home, her fingers wrapped tightly around a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. Outside, the morning sun painted the neighborhood in soft gold. Children rode their bikes down the cul-de-sac, and sprinklers hissed lazily across manicured lawns. To anyone passing by, it looked like a scene carved straight out of the American dream. But Cassandra knew better. The American dream was a costume, one she had learned to wear convincingly, and like any costume, it could be removed the moment she needed to reveal who she truly was. She leaned back in her chair, crossing one leg over the other. Her mind was already racing ahead, sketching out scenarios, weighing risks and rewards, replaying conversations in her head as if rehearsing lines for a play. Her husband, Daniel, thought he knew her. He believed she was the loyal wife who managed the household, smiled at the neighbors, and kept the family calendar neat and precise. He didn't see the shadows she moved in. He didn't hear the late-night calls she took in the garage, the ones where she lowered her voice to a whisper. And he certainly didn't sense the trap she was already beginning to set. The first lie of the day. That morning, Daniel came down the stairs in his neatly pressed shirt, adjusting his tie. His brow furrowed when he saw her staring blankly into the distance. "You okay?" he asked, leaning against the counter. Cassandra turned her head slowly, then offered a practiced smile, the kind of smile that disarmed, reassured, convinced. "Just tired. Didn't sleep well." It was only half a lie. She hadn't slept much, but not because of restlessness. She had been awake most of the night, scrolling through encrypted messages, planning her next steps and making a list of people who could become liabilities if they talked. Daniel poured himself a cup of coffee, oblivious to the dark storm swirling only a few feet away. "You've been on edge a lot lately," he said, sipping. "Work stress?" "Something like that," she replied softly, lowering her eyes in just the right way. Vulnerable, harmless, that was the key. Her lies were never grand. They were small, believable deceptions that built upon one another until they formed an entire architecture of falsehoods. Daniel had walked through that structure for years, never once suspecting the walls around him were hollow. The mask she wore. After he left for work, Cassandra allowed her mask to slip. She walked into the living room, closed the blinds, and locked the door. Then she opened her laptop and began typing rapidly, her fingers moving with precision across the keys. Her messages weren't to co-workers, and they weren't about PTA meetings or family vacations. They were coded instructions, delivered to people who owed her favors, people who had once stood in her debt and now served her in silence. She had learned long ago that secrets were currency, and Cassandra was rich. One message stood out. It was a reply she hadn't expected so soon. A contact from her past, someone she had thought gone for good, was back in play. The message was simple, but it carried the weight of a loaded gun. "We need to meet. Too many eyes are watching. You know where." Her heart raced, but not with fear, with anticipation. The web of lies. That afternoon, Cassandra drove across town under the guise of running errands. She even picked up groceries, slipping in boxes of cereal and milk as props for her cover story. If anyone asked where she had been, the receipt would serve as her alibi. But her real stop was at a quiet cafe near the river, the kind of place where businessmen held hushed conversations and no one remembered faces for long. She chose a booth in the back, her eyes scanning every corner. Then, a man slid into the seat across from her. He was older, weathered by time and regret, but his eyes were sharp. "You shouldn't have contacted me," she said, though her voice betrayed no real protest. "You always say that," he replied with a smirk. "And yet you always show up." Cassandra leaned forward. "What do you want?" "I want to remind you that lies don't stay buried forever. You've built quite the life here. Husband, house, neighbors who wave at you every morning. But you and I both know it's all paper thin. One gust of wind, Cassandra, and it all blows away." She didn't flinch. Instead, she stirred her coffee slowly, as if his words meant nothing. But inside, her mind was already recalculating. If this man was back in the picture, he could unravel everything. He knew too much. "Then, I guess," she said quietly, "I'll just have to make sure the wind never comes." The plot thickens. Back at home, Cassandra rehearsed her next set of lies. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, practicing her tone, adjusting her expressions. Would Daniel believe she was planning a surprise for him? Would the neighbors buy the story about her volunteering at the community center? Every lie needed layers, reasons, details, distractions. A lie without texture was fragile. A lie with too many threads was unbreakable. That night, when Daniel came home, Cassandra greeted him with a kiss on the cheek and a casual laugh. She told him about running into an old friend at the cafe, slipping in names and anecdotes she had carefully invented hours before. He listened, nodded, and never once questioned her. It was almost too easy. The diary she hid. But Cassandra had one weakness. In the back of her closet, tucked inside an old shoebox beneath a pile of scarves, lay a leather-bound journal. To anyone else, it looked like a diary filled with harmless notes. But the truth was far more dangerous. Every entry was a confession, a meticulous record of her lies, her plots, and the people she had deceived. It was her blueprint, her insurance policy, her secret archive of sins. She checked it that night, running her fingers over the pages. She never wrote in plain words. Instead, she used symbols and codes only she could decipher. Still, the thought of someone finding it made her chest tighten, because if Daniel ever opened this book, his entire world would shatter. The next move. As the clock struck midnight, Cassandra sat by the window again, watching the shadows move across the street. She thought about the man from the cafe, about the hidden threats lingering just beyond her control. But she also thought about the opportunities. Every lie created a new opening. Every secret gave her leverage. The danger didn't frighten her. It fueled her. She thrived on the game, on the delicate balance between exposure and control. And now, with her web tightening and her enemies stirring, Cassandra knew one thing with absolute certainty. Her next move would have to be her boldest yet. She closed the blinds, slipped the journal back into its hiding place, and whispered to herself with a faint smile, "Let's see who breaks first." Daniel had always prided himself on being a man of logic. As a financial consultant, he spent his days analyzing risk, spotting discrepancies in reports, and noticing patterns others overlooked. It was second nature for him to detect when numbers didn't add up. But lately, it wasn't spreadsheets that nagged at him. It was his wife. For years, Cassandra had been the steady center of his life. Organized, composed, the one who kept everything in order. But something had shifted. He couldn't pinpoint when exactly, but small details had started gnawing at him. A misplaced receipt, a story that didn't quite line up, the way her phone seemed to vanish whenever he walked into the room. At first, he brushed it off. Marriage wasn't about monitoring every detail. Everyone had secrets, even harmless ones. But now, the unease was growing, and Daniel's gut told him something wasn't right. A tiny crack. The first real crack appeared on a Tuesday night. Cassandra had told him she was going to a community center meeting about organizing a charity fundraiser. She returned home later than expected, her hair wind-blown, her blouse smelling faintly, not of sweat, but of a perfume he didn't recognize. Daniel had asked casually, "So how was the meeting?" Her answer was smooth, almost too smooth. Long, boring, just planning stuff no one really wants to do. He let it go in the moment, but something about the way she avoided eye contact stuck with him. Daniel had learned over years of negotiating contracts that sometimes what people didn't say was more important than what they did. That night, lying awake in bed, he replayed her words in his mind, dissecting them like a puzzle. Was she lying? If so, why? The shadow of doubt. A few days later, Daniel stopped by the community center during his lunch break. He didn't mean to pry, or at least that's what he told himself. He only wanted reassurance. But when he asked about the fundraiser committee, the receptionist looked puzzled. "Committee?" she repeated. "We don't have anything like that right now. Maybe later in the year." Daniel felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He forced a polite smile, thanked her, and walked back to his car. The whole drive back to his office, his thoughts spiraled. Why would Cassandra lie about something so trivial? Unless it wasn't trivial at all. The neighbor's comment. The doubt only deepened when their neighbor, Mrs. Whitaker, stopped by one morning. She was the kind of neighbor who noticed everything, from who left their garbage cans out too long to which cars pulled into which driveways. "I saw Cassandra downtown yesterday," she chirped while handing Daniel a package the delivery truck had left at her house. "She looked so elegant, meeting someone at that little cafe by the river. Must have been a special lunch, hmm?" Daniel smiled faintly, masking the sudden jolt inside him. Cassandra had told him she spent the entire afternoon shopping for groceries. He thanked Mrs. Whitaker and closed the door, but his hands lingered on the box, knuckles white. The cafe. Again. The phone call. That evening, Daniel decided to pay closer attention. Cassandra was in the kitchen preparing dinner, her phone lying face down on the counter. When it buzzed, she moved quicker than he'd ever seen her, snatching it up and slipping it into her pocket. "Who was that?" he asked, keeping his tone casual. "Just spam," she replied, brushing him off with a smile. "You know how those calls never stop." But Daniel wasn't convinced. He'd seen her thumb flick over the screen, seen the way her eyes darted before she hid it away. That wasn't how someone reacted to a spam call. Later that night, when she went upstairs, Daniel lingered in the kitchen. He stared at the spot where her phone had rested as if it had burned a mark into the counter. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. Planting seeds of suspicion. He didn't confront her. Not yet. He knew better than to accuse without proof. Cassandra was sharp. Too sharp. If he pushed too hard, she'd close herself off completely, and he'd never get the truth. Instead, he began watching. Quietly. Carefully. He noted the time she left the house, the excuses she gave, the way her mood shifted depending on what she claimed to be doing. He listened to the cadence of her voice, how sometimes her laughter felt rehearsed. Daniel started writing things down in a notebook he kept in his desk drawer at work. Times, dates, small inconsistencies. It felt wrong, almost like betraying her, but the gnawing in his gut wouldn't let him stop. A slip of the tongue. The turning point came one evening when Cassandra mentioned running into her old friend Jessica at the cafe. She laughed while telling the story, her tone casual, but Daniel froze. "Jessica?" he asked lightly. "From college?" "Yes," Cassandra said, too quickly, but Daniel remembered Jessica. She'd moved to Denver years ago, and the last he'd heard she wasn't planning on coming back. "Oh," he said carefully. "Funny. I thought she still lived in Denver." For a flicker of a second, Cassandra's mask slipped. Her eyes widened, her smile faltered, but then it was back, smooth as ever. "She was just visiting," she said. "Total coincidence." Daniel nodded, but the chill inside him deepened. That wasn't coincidence. That was a cover. The husband's decision. That night, Daniel lay awake again, staring at the ceiling while Cassandra slept soundly beside him. His mind was a storm of questions. Who was she meeting? Why the lies? What was she hiding? Part of him wanted to confront her right then, shake her awake, demand answers. But another part, the rational part, knew it wasn't time. He didn't just want answers. He wanted the truth, and the truth required evidence. So Daniel made a decision. If Cassandra was keeping secrets, he would find out what they were, no matter how deep he had to dig. As the clock ticked toward dawn, Daniel whispered to himself, so quietly that even in her sleep, Cassandra couldn't hear, "I'll know everything soon. Everything." Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever had that gut feeling? The one that tells you something is terribly wrong, even though on the surface everything looks perfectly fine? That's exactly where Daniel found himself. And in this chapter, he's about to stumble onto something he was never meant to see. But before we dive deeper, let me pause for a second. If you're loving this story so far and want to see how far Cassandra's lies go, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our storytelling family. Because trust me, the twists ahead will leave you breathless. Now, let's get back to Daniel. The wrong closet at the wrong time. It happened on an ordinary Saturday morning. Cassandra had rushed out saying she needed to run errands before a brunch with her friend Jessica again. Daniel didn't believe her, but he played along. Left alone in the house, Daniel decided to finally fix the loose door hinge in their master bedroom closet. He grabbed his toolkit, knelt down, and started unscrewing the metal plate. But as he worked, his elbow brushed against the far wall of the closet, and the panel gave a little. At first he thought it was just age and wear, but then he pressed harder, and to his shock, a narrow compartment revealed itself, hidden behind the row of her neatly arranged dresses. And inside, a small leather-bound journal. The journal no one was meant to read. Daniel picked it up, his heart hammering in his chest. The leather was worn, like Cassandra had opened it countless times. But what chilled him wasn't the journal itself. It was what was written inside. Page after page of scribbled words, phrases, and numbers, but not in plain English. The entries were written in some kind of code, part shorthand, part symbols, mixed with strange little diagrams. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, flipping through it. The writing was frantic in some places, careful and deliberate in others. Certain names appeared repeatedly, though never spelled out fully, just initials, like MH, RT, and a chilling repeated symbol, a dagger drawn in black ink. One page had a single sentence written over and over again, almost like a chant. Control is survival. Trust is death. The first clue. Now let me ask you, if you found something like that in your spouse's journal, what would you think? Would you panic? Would you confront them right away? Or would you, like Daniel, feel that icy hand of fear creep down your spine and whisper, "You've only scratched the surface"? Because that's exactly what happened. As Daniel turned the pages, he found an entry dated just a week before. It mentioned the river and the final act, followed by another dagger symbol. He didn't understand it. Not yet. But something deep inside told him it was dangerous, maybe even deadly. And then he saw it, his own initials. DW scrawled next to them was a single word, eliminate. A dangerous game. Daniel dropped the journal, his hands trembling. He wanted to run, to throw the thing back into the hidden compartment and forget he ever saw it. But curiosity, mixed with dread, anchored him in place. What did Cassandra mean by eliminate? Was it metaphorical? Some twisted form of venting, or was it literal? The thought of his wife plotting against him made his chest tighten. He looked around the bedroom, suddenly seeing everything differently. The tidy bedspread, the carefully folded clothes, the neatness of the space. It was all a mask, a disguise for the chaos inside her mind. Almost caught. Then came the sound that nearly froze Daniel's blood. the front door unlocking. Cassandra was home early. He shoved the journal back into the compartment, yanked the panel shut, and scrambled to grab his toolkit. By the time Cassandra stepped into the bedroom, Daniel was crouched down, pretending to fiddle with the hinge. "Oh, hey," he said, forcing a smile. "Thought I'd finally fix this thing." Cassandra tilted her head, studying him for a beat too long. "Good idea," she said finally, setting her shopping bag down. "We can't have loose things lying around, can we?" Her tone was casual, but Daniel swore he saw the faintest flicker in her eyes, almost as if she knew exactly what he had just touched. The weight of knowledge. That night, Daniel lay awake again, staring at the ceiling while Cassandra breathed steadily beside him. His mind kept circling back to the journal. The initials, the code, the word, eliminate. He wanted answers, desperately, but he also knew he had just crossed into dangerous territory. If Cassandra discovered that he had seen her secret, there was no telling what she might do. And here's where I want you to pause and think. What would you do in Daniel's place? Would you confront your wife? Would you secretly try to decode the journal? Or would you pack your bags and get out before it was too late? Because Daniel, he chose the second option. He wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. He needed to know just how deep this rabbit hole went. A silent vow. Daniel made a vow to himself. The next time Cassandra left the house, he would take the journal, copy its contents, and begin decoding the madness inside. He didn't know what he would find, but one thing was becoming terrifyingly clear. His wife wasn't just lying to him. She was planning something much darker than he had ever imagined. And as he drifted into a restless sleep, one last thought haunted him. Maybe Cassandra wasn't just playing a game of secrets. Maybe she was planning his end. All right, folks. If you thought things were intense before, buckle up. This is the moment when Daniel's quiet suspicion explodes into real terror. He's about to learn that Cassandra is not just lying. She's orchestrating something far more dangerous than he ever imagined. And yes, what he discovers next will make you question trust, loyalty, and how well you really know the people closest to you. But first, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button because the twists are about to get insane. You won't want to miss a second of this. The journal reopens. Daniel waited until Cassandra left again, this time claiming she had a luncheon with a friend from the charity committee. He knew better, he always did, but it was the perfect cover to finally confront the truth. He went straight to the closet, heart pounding, and carefully pulled the journal from its hidden compartment. He set it on the bed, staring at it like it held the answers to every nightmare he'd had in the past week. This wasn't a normal journal. The writing wasn't just coded, it was layered. Each page contained symbols, shorthand, names, and cryptic numbers. Some entries had locations, others had times, and almost all had Cassandra's signature dagger symbol in black ink. Daniel felt the weight of it. Every man has a breaking point, a moment when the reality of danger hits him. This was his. First clues. He began decoding cautiously, using logic and deduction. He noticed patterns. The dagger symbol always appeared near the initials of someone in the house or someone connected to Cassandra. And then, he noticed a date. July 16th. D.W. That was him. Daniel William Harrington. Next to it were more scribbles, arrows pointing toward a river symbol. And then one word repeated 3 times in a line. Finalize. Daniel swallowed hard. It wasn't just a diary, it was a blueprint. And the blueprint led directly to him. The layers of danger. The more he read, the clearer it became. Cassandra was patient, methodical, and meticulous. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment betrayal. This was a plan she had crafted over weeks, months, maybe even years. Every lie he'd noticed, her trips to the cafe, the fake errands, the alibis, suddenly clicked into place. They weren't coincidences. They were rehearsed, calculated, and executed with precision. Daniel felt the chill of fear crawling up his spine. He wasn't just being lied to. He was being hunted. Breaking the code. Using a pen and notebook of his own, Daniel began decoding the entries. The symbols were simple enough once you recognized the pattern. Triangles meant a meeting, circles indicated observation, and arrows pointed toward action. Dates and initials combined to show the order in which she would approach her targets. By the time he reached the last few pages, Daniel's hands were shaking. Cassandra's plan wasn't just a threat to him. Anyone who got in her way was listed. Family, friends, even employees in her inner circle. And at the center of it all was him. If she succeeded, Daniel Harrington would disappear, and no one would ever know why. The first real panic. Daniel's breath quickened. He tried to stay calm, reminding himself he wasn't powerless. He had the journal now. The evidence was in his hands, but panic is sneaky. It whispers in your mind, telling you that one wrong move could ruin everything. He sat back on the bed, running his hands through his hair. How did he miss all the signs? The cafe, the fake errands, the friend from college story. They were all pieces of a puzzle he didn't even know he was solving. And now, suddenly, the picture was terrifyingly clear. A dangerous plan forms. Daniel knew he couldn't confront Cassandra directly. Not yet. She was clever, and if she suspected he had seen the journal, she would move faster than he could react. Instead, he needed a strategy. Evidence gathering. He would copy the journal, photograph each page, and create a timeline of her movements. Allies. He needed someone he could trust, someone outside her influence. Not a single friend or family member could be relied on blindly. Patience. Cassandra thrived on control. Daniel would have to wait for the right moment to act, which meant enduring every lie she told him in the meantime. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about survival. This was about outsmarting one of the most dangerous people he had ever met. A hidden thread. As he studied the journal, Daniel noticed a subtle pattern he had missed before. Certain pages were not just about actions. They contained small sketches of the house, the rooms, and even hidden pathways. One sketch depicted a small storage area in the basement, with arrows pointing toward a narrow exit. Daniel's heart raced. This could be her escape route, or worse, her way to trap him. He had no choice. He had to investigate. He quietly crept down to the basement that evening, flashlight in hand, every creak of the stairs making him jump. The air was cold, damp, smelling faintly of mold. But he pressed on, every sense alert. There, in the far corner, he found it. A hidden door behind a row of stacked boxes. He traced the arrows from the journal and realized this was the very path Cassandra had planned to use to finalize her act. The stakes are clear. Daniel stepped back, the reality of the situation settling in fully. Cassandra wasn't just scheming. She had calculated every move, every lie, every observation. And the journal was proof that if he hesitated or made a wrong move, she could end him and no one would question a word of it. And yet, there was hope, because now he had knowledge. The one thing Cassandra hadn't anticipated, Daniel seeing through her design. He whispered to himself, almost as a promise, "You won't win, not while I'm alive." And here's where we leave Daniel. At the edge of danger, armed with the journal but unsure how far Cassandra's plan reaches. He has a choice: act immediately and risk exposure, or wait and gather more evidence, but every second he hesitates, the trap tightens around him. Folks, this is the moment where you're thinking, will he survive? Will Cassandra discover him? How far will her lies go? Stick around, because in the next chapter the tension escalates even further. Daniel begins to piece together a confrontation that could either save his life or push him straight into the ultimate trap. All right, everyone. This is the moment you've been waiting for. Daniel knows too much. Cassandra's lies are unraveling, and the tension, it's about to explode. Stick close, because every second of this confrontation is layered with suspense, emotion, and stakes higher than ever. But first, if you're not already part of the Topcore family, hit that subscribe button now, because the twists ahead are absolutely insane. You won't believe what happens next. Testing the waters, Daniel spent the morning carefully planning. Every word he spoke, every move he made had to be calculated. Cassandra was sharp, and he knew one wrong glance or hesitation could alert her. He decided to start small. He casually mentioned he had seen a new cafe downtown that had that weird little back room he thought she might enjoy. The words were casual, even playful. Cassandra tilted her head, an almost imperceptible flicker in her eyes. She smiled, masking it perfectly. "Oh, that sounds interesting," she said. "I'll have to check it out." Daniel nodded, masking his curiosity. Inside, however, his mind was racing. That flicker in her eyes, it told him she was calculating, assessing, measuring him just as he was measuring her. Setting a subtle trap. Next, he needed proof, something tangible. He decided to leave a small, innocuous note on the kitchen counter. "Daniel, I'll be at the Riverside Cafe around 3 p.m. Don't forget the meeting you promised me." It wasn't a real meeting, of course. It was bait, designed to test whether Cassandra would react, check on him, or reveal her own plans. By mid-afternoon, Daniel was watching from the living room window. He saw her leave the house, brisk and purposeful. And yes, she was checking her phone constantly, her steps quickening as if she had just realized someone else was moving pieces on the board. It was a small victory. She had reacted. She was aware, and now he had confirmation. She was watching, always. The conversation that shakes. That evening, he decided it was time for words. Carefully, he approached Cassandra while she was folding laundry in the master bedroom. "You seem busy today," he said casually. "Something on your mind?" Cassandra smiled, folding a blouse with precision. "Just errands. You know how it is." Daniel leaned against the doorframe, masking the storm inside him. "Errands, huh? Funny. I was thinking about the journal I found the other day." Cassandra froze ever so slightly. The air in the room seemed to thicken. She didn't look shocked. No, not exactly. But her hands paused mid-fold, and Daniel saw the tiniest twitch in her jaw. "The journal," she said slowly, her voice careful. "Yeah," Daniel replied, stepping closer. "I've been reading it, trying to understand your handwriting style." Now, here's the kicker. Cassandra didn't panic outright. She smiled, serene, almost amused. But Daniel could feel the tension rolling off her like heat from a stove. "You've been reading it?" she asked, her tone deceptively calm. "Yes," Daniel said. "And I have to say, it's fascinating, very detailed, careful planning. I just want to understand you better, that's all." The subtle mind game. Daniel's approach was simple. He wouldn't accuse her, at least not yet. Accusation would trigger her defenses. Instead, he was testing her, gauging how far her lies would stretch and whether she would slip under pressure. Cassandra responded with calm poise. "I write things down to organize my thoughts," she said. "You know me. I like lists. It's nothing more." Daniel nodded, pretending to believe her, but every word she spoke, every controlled gesture, confirmed what he already suspected. She was dangerous, precise, and fully aware of the game she was playing. He decided to push just a little further. Pushing the envelope later that night, Daniel left another subtle breadcrumb. This time, he left the journal slightly out in the open, so it could be accidentally seen. Then he watched, hidden in the shadows of the hallway. Cassandra entered the room, and Daniel could see her eyes flick toward the journal. She froze, just for a heartbeat. That pause, just a fraction of a second, was everything. It confirmed that the journal wasn't just a notebook. It was her weapon, her blueprint, her playbook for everything she had planned. She didn't pick it up, didn't move it. Instead, she exhaled slowly, almost imperceptibly, and walked out of the room. That tiny act told Daniel what he needed to know. She was fully aware he had access to her secrets. And now, the game had escalated. The stakes intensify. Daniel realized something crucial. Cassandra wasn't just hiding secrets, she was actively manipulating every situation to her advantage. Every move he made now had consequences. Every test, every trap he set, had to be measured carefully. One mistake, and she would know. One mistake, and he could be trapped. This knowledge sent a rush of adrenaline through him. His mind raced with possibilities, planning contingencies for every eventuality. He couldn't confront her fully. Not yet. He needed leverage, allies, a strategy that would keep him one step ahead. But one thing was certain. Cassandra had underestimated him. A moment of uneasy respect. For a brief, strange moment, Daniel allowed himself to feel respect, not affection, not love. Respect. She was brilliant, calculating, and terrifyingly competent. Every lie she had told, every manipulation had been executed with surgical precision. But respect didn't mean surrender. He reminded himself, knowledge is power. The journal was proof, the patterns, the hidden pathways, the timing. They were all exposed to him now, and he would use that knowledge to protect himself, and maybe, just maybe, to turn the tables. And here's the kicker, folks. Right now, Daniel knows too much, Cassandra knows he knows, and the tension between them is about to explode. Will he wait for the right moment to strike, or will she make the first move? The truth is, neither of them can afford a mistake. Every glance, every step, every word spoken in that house is now a dangerous move in a high-stakes chess game. And let me tell you, the next chapter? It's going to be one of the most intense yet. Because Daniel is about to push further and Cassandra, well, she's already several moves ahead. All right, folks, things are about to get serious. Daniel isn't just watching anymore. He's no longer waiting for Cassandra to make a move. He's making his move. And let me tell you, every step he takes now is dangerous, calculated, and high stakes. Buckle up. Before we continue, if you haven't joined the Top Core family, smash that subscribe button now, because the tension is about to explode and you cannot miss a second. Daniel's plan takes shape. The first thing Daniel did was secure the journal, not just to study it, but to create a digital copy, photographing every page, every code, every dagger symbol. He knew that if Cassandra ever suspected he had physical evidence, she might try to destroy it, or worse, manipulate him. Next, he started monitoring patterns. He noted the times she left the house, the cafes she visited, the people she interacted with. He created a map of her activities, a timeline of her lies. Every detail he observed became a piece of a larger counterplan, planting a controlled test. Daniel wanted to see how far Cassandra would go if he subtly interfered. He set a small trap, a false message left in the kitchen. I met with MH today. Did you hear the news? It was ambiguous, a nudge, a little breadcrumb to test her reaction. Within hours, Cassandra's behavior shifted. She checked her phone obsessively, lingered near the living room, and even glanced at the kitchen where the message had been left. Daniel watched from the study, heart racing. She knew someone was messing with her plan. And now, he knew she was aware. The game escalates. By evening, Daniel had executed a series of small, controlled actions. A planted call to her friend, intentionally left on speaker to see if she would intervene. Subtle rearrangement of objects in the closet, to monitor if she noticed them. Strategic questions in casual conversation, probing her responses without raising suspicion. Every reaction she gave, every micro-expression, told him more than any direct confrontation could. And each time she adjusted, quickly, silently, ruthlessly. Cassandra suspects. Cassandra was sharp, brilliantly so. She sensed someone was interfering. Her smile, once unshakable, now carried a hint of caution, her tone measured with extra care. She even started leaving subtle traces, misleading trails to confuse whoever was observing her. She had no idea Daniel was reading her, photographing her plans and analyzing her every move. She thought she was always 3 steps ahead, but Daniel was learning quickly, and he had something Cassandra didn't: patience and the determination to survive. The first direct confrontation. That night, Daniel decided to confront her, but carefully. He didn't accuse. He didn't reveal everything he knew. Instead, he subtly hinted. "You seem stressed lately," he said, leaning casually against the doorway. "Is something going on? Anything you want to share?" Cassandra's eyes flickered. She paused, considering her words. Then she smiled, a careful, controlled smile. "I'm just tired," she said smoothly. "You know how busy life gets." Daniel nodded, but inside he was preparing his next move. He needed to push further without triggering her fully. Testing her limits, Daniel decided to escalate his trap. He left a note, visible yet ambiguous. "I know you've been planning something. I hope we can talk before it's too late." It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't a threat. It was a lure. Within the hour, Cassandra returned home early. Her face remained composed, but Daniel noticed her hands tightening slightly as she set down her bag. Every inch of her body betrayed subtle tension, a silent acknowledgement that the game had changed. She was no longer entirely in control. Daniel strikes subtle blows. Over the next few days, Daniel executed a sequence of controlled tests. He rearranged a few items in the hidden closet, noting if she reacted. He subtly referenced the journal in conversation, testing whether she would panic or deflect. He observed her patterns, using decoys and distractions to gauge her next moves. Cassandra adjusted each time, but Daniel's traps were methodical. Each small victory reinforced his confidence. She was vulnerable, and her careful control was starting to crack. The first major clue one evening, while reviewing the journal again, Daniel noticed something he hadn't seen before. A reference to a meeting at the Riverside Park, coded with time and initials. The timing matched the entries about his name, the finalized steps he had read earlier. This was more than a clue. This was a plan in motion. Cassandra was preparing for a big move, something potentially life-threatening for him, and he now had the chance to intercept it. High-stakes chess. The tension escalated like a ticking time bomb. Daniel realized the stakes. If he acted too soon, he risked triggering Cassandra's ultimate plan. If he waited too long, he could be trapped. Every action had to be precise, calculated. He began drawing mental scenarios. What would happen if she discovered the copies of the journal? If she altered her route? If she set a direct trap for him? Every possible outcome was dangerous. And yet Daniel's resolve only hardened. He had to outsmart her, and that's where we leave it, folks. Daniel is fully aware now. He's planning his countermove. Cassandra senses interference and the tension. It's off the charts. Will Daniel be able to intercept her plan before it's too late? Or has Cassandra already set the ultimate trap, waiting to see if he's clever enough to survive? Trust me, in the next chapter, we'll see the first direct collision of their strategies. And it's going to be intense, emotional, and absolutely jaw-dropping. All right, everyone. Brace yourselves. This is the moment when everything Daniel has been preparing for finally collides with Cassandra's deadly schemes. Every calculated move, every subtle test, every piece of evidence is about to explode into a confrontation that could change everything. Before we dive in, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button because the next chapters are going to be absolutely insane. Trust me, you do not want to miss a single second. Setting the stage. Daniel had been preparing for this moment for days. He knew Cassandra's movements, her schedules, and the coded entries in her journal like the back of his hand. Every detail was accounted for. The Riverside Park, the time, the people she expected to be there. He wasn't just waiting for her to act anymore. He was going to intercept, disrupt, and finally test the boundaries of her control. And the kicker? Cassandra suspected someone was interfering. She didn't know it was Daniel specifically yet, but the cracks in her calm, controlled facade were starting to show. The bait Daniel left a subtle trail leading to the Riverside Park. A note, perfectly ambiguous, placed where Cassandra would find it. "Meet me by the fountain at 3 p.m. We need to talk. It wasn't meant to be a conversation. It was bait, a lure to draw her out, to see how far she was willing to go. By early afternoon, Daniel was in position, hiding in the shadows near the fountain. The air was tense, every rustle of leaves sounding like a warning. And then, he saw her. Cassandra. Graceful, composed, yet with a hint of steel in her eyes. She wasn't walking. She was gliding, aware of the invisible chessboard beneath her feet. The first move. As she approached the fountain, Daniel stepped out subtly from behind a tree. "Hello, Cassandra," he said, voice calm but firm. "I was hoping we'd meet like this." She stopped, mid-step, her eyes narrowing. "Daniel, what is this?" He smiled faintly. "Just a chat. You and I have some things to discuss." Cassandra's lips curved into a polite, controlled smile. But Daniel saw it, just for a fraction of a second. A flicker of uncertainty, the first sign that she didn't fully know the board anymore. Testing her reactions, Daniel started slowly, carefully. He mentioned small details she had assumed he hadn't noticed. The rearranged closet items, the subtle signs he had seen in the journal. "You've been very busy lately," he said casually. "Planning, organizing. I imagine it takes a lot of energy." Cassandra tilted her head. Her voice remained smooth, but there was a subtle tension in it. "I'm always busy. You know that." Daniel leaned closer, whispering almost conspiratorially. "Busy enough to plan things, maybe things involving me?" The pause that followed was almost unbearable. Cassandra's smile didn't falter, but her fingers tightened around her handbag. She wasn't panicking, but she was calculating, and Daniel could feel it. The confrontation escalates. Daniel didn't reveal the journal yet, not the full contents. Instead, he pushed her subtly, watching every micro-expression. "You know," he said slowly, "I've been thinking about all the strategies you've set in motion. Funny thing, I think I can see your moves before you make them now." Cassandra's eyes flicked, scanning the area. Her cool composure cracked just enough for Daniel to notice. She realized someone was interfering directly, but she didn't know how much. The first risk. Then she did something unexpected. She stepped closer to him, her voice low, almost deadly. "Daniel, do you think you understand me? Do you think you know what I'm capable of?" Daniel didn't flinch. He stood tall, meeting her gaze. "I don't just think I know, Cassandra. I know." The words hung between them like a spark over dry leaves. Both knew the tension was at a breaking point. One wrong word, one wrong move, and the confrontation could turn deadly. Testing the trap, Daniel subtly maneuvered, guiding her toward the small pathways he had discovered from the journal. He wanted to see if she would lead him into a trap, or if she had already predicted his counterplan. Cassandra followed cautiously, each step measured. She was fully aware someone was now playing against her. Her calm facade remained, but Daniel could see it. The cracks in her armor, the flicker of uncertainty. It was a subtle victory, but a dangerous one. The first major revelation. Once they reached the fountain, Daniel decided to push harder. He mentioned one detail only someone who had studied the journal could know, the timing of her next finalized move. "Funny," he said, voice steady. "You're planning something tomorrow. I know where you're going and I know who you're targeting." Cassandra froze, just for the briefest moment. Then her composure returned, but Daniel could see it in her eyes. She now fully realized he had been observing, decoding, and anticipating her every move. This was the turning point. She was no longer the only player in control. The stakes skyrocket. Daniel knew he couldn't act fully yet. He needed more evidence, a clearer picture, and a safe way to neutralize her without endangering himself. But he had achieved something crucial. He had made Cassandra aware that someone had cracked part of her plan. And that awareness was dangerous, for both of them. Now every move Cassandra made would be cautious, calculated, and slightly defensive. Daniel had forced her into a reactive position for the first time. And that's where we leave Chapter 10, folks. Daniel has executed his first major countermove. Cassandra knows someone is interfering. The tension is sky high. Will Cassandra escalate her plan immediately? Will Daniel be able to stay one step ahead? And what happens when the next move becomes life or death? Trust me, in the next chapter, the stakes explode even further, with Daniel taking bigger risks and Cassandra pushing dangerous limits. This story is only getting hotter. All right, folks. This is where the tension hits a whole new level. Daniel isn't just reacting anymore. He's predicting, maneuvering, and stepping directly into Cassandra's game with strategy and nerve. Every move now carries risk, and every second could be a turning point. Before we get started, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do it now, because you do not want to miss what happens next. Things are about to get dangerously intense. The stakes are clear. Daniel knew one thing. Cassandra wasn't just dangerous, she was proactive. She would anticipate hesitation, exploit mistakes, and strike before he could react. Waiting for her to act would be a mistake. He needed to act first, but carefully. One wrong step could give her the upper hand, and he wasn't willing to gamble with his life. So he devised a plan, a series of calculated moves designed to draw her out, expose her next steps, and buy him time. Mapping her moves. The first step was intelligence gathering. Daniel meticulously reviewed the journal, the coded diary entries, and his own observations. He mapped every pathway, every scheduled event, and every person Cassandra interacted with. He created a timeline that predicted her next move, based on patterns, hidden codes, and behavior analysis. Every detail mattered. Next, he identified a safe location to monitor the key areas, a vantage point where he could see without being seen. Every creak, every shadow, every footstep would be a signal. The controlled maneuver. Daniel decided to test his predictions. Using the riverside park as bait once again, he planted subtle hints that he would be present during her next finalized move. It wasn't a direct confrontation, at least not yet. Instead, he arranged for a decoy setup, a small briefcase left near the fountain with visible suspicious documents inside, designed to lure Cassandra. Then he hid nearby, watching every movement. Cassandra's suspicion. Cassandra arrived on time, scanning the area with careful precision. She noticed the briefcase immediately. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the shadows, suspicion sharpening her expression. Daniel could see the gears turning in her mind. She was analyzing, calculating, weighing risks, and now she knew someone had been tampering with her plans. It was working. Testing her limits, Daniel decided to increase the pressure. He moved subtly, making sure his shadow was visible for just a moment, enough for her to notice but not enough to reveal his full position. Cassandra paused, her body tense, then slowly approached the briefcase. She reached toward it, and Daniel held his breath. Would she check it thoroughly? Would she set a trap of her own? Or would she retreat, cautious and frustrated? Her fingers brushed the briefcase briefly, then withdrew. She looked around, scanning the area for intruders or threats, and Daniel realized she hadn't expected him to be this bold. Escalating the stakes. With the first test successful, Daniel knew he had opened a window of opportunity. He could now predict certain reactions with confidence, giving him the chance to preemptively disrupt her next major move. He didn't act recklessly. Every step was measured. Every observation was noted. He now had a clear sense of her thought patterns and strategies, which meant he could plan his next move without revealing his full hand. Emotional tension. As Daniel watched Cassandra's every move, he couldn't ignore the emotional toll. Fear, adrenaline, and anticipation surged through him, but so did determination. He was no longer the man hiding in shadows. He was a strategist, a survivor, someone who refused to let fear dictate his actions. And yet, he couldn't deny the subtle thrill of outsmarting someone as dangerous as Cassandra. It was a dangerous game, but Daniel thrived on the challenge. The first defensive strike. Using his knowledge from the journal, Daniel subtly interfered with one of Cassandra's planned interactions. He switched minor details in her route, leaving subtle signs that someone had altered her environment. Cassandra noticed immediately. Her reaction was careful, calculated, but Daniel could see the tension in her posture, the tiny quiver in her hand as she adjusted her plans. She realized finally that someone was actively working against her, that someone was clever, that someone was watching. Daniel has taken the first major steps to anticipate Cassandra's next moves, subtly interfering while keeping himself safe. Cassandra knows someone is interfering, but she doesn't yet know the full extent. The tension is sky high. The emotional stakes are enormous. And the next chapter? Well, that's when Daniel begins executing the full counterplan. Every secret, every coded move, every hidden agenda is about to collide. Trust me, you won't want to miss Chapter 12. This is where the game escalates into a full-blown high-stakes confrontation that will leave your heart racing. All right, everyone. This is where the stakes hit a boiling point. Daniel isn't testing anymore. He's taking real action. Cassandra senses the shift, her paranoia spikes, and the tension. Off the charts. Every word, every step, every breath is dangerous. But first, if you haven't already subscribed to Top Core, hit that button now, because what comes next is absolute madness. You do not want to miss a single moment. Preparing the strike. Daniel spent the morning meticulously planning his counterstrike. Every step Cassandra had ever taken, every coded note in her journal, every subtle manipulation, he now used it against her. This wasn't reckless. It wasn't luck. It was calculated, precise, and designed to keep him one step ahead. He had set contingencies for her every move. Every trap she might attempt, he had already accounted for. He was ready. The first move. The action began subtly. Daniel intercepted one of Cassandra's communications, an arranged meeting with an accomplice. Using a decoy phone, he posed as someone else, subtly manipulating the conversation. Within hours, Cassandra realized the interference. Her eyes narrowed, a flash of danger passing through them. She didn't yet know who was behind it, but she knew someone was blocking her. Her control, so carefully maintained, was slipping. Psychological pressure. Daniel didn't confront her directly, yet. Instead, he applied psychological pressure. He left minor clues suggesting he had already uncovered more than he truly had. A small envelope, left conspicuously on her car seat, labeled simply, "We need to talk." Subtle changes in her environment, doors slightly ajar, objects in unexpected places, casual mentions of her coded plans, dropped into conversation as if accidentally overheard. Each subtle interference frayed her composure just a little more. Cassandra was smart, ruthless even, but now she was forced into reaction mode, the first time anyone had ever disrupted her plans without her control. The tension builds. By mid-afternoon, Daniel escalated further. He positioned himself near the Riverside Park, the site of one of Cassandra's next moves. He had arranged for a decoy package knowing she might check it. Sure enough, she appeared, calm and precise, yet her eyes betrayed subtle suspicion. Every step she took was deliberate, but there was caution now, a hint that she was aware the game had changed. Daniel watched from the shadows, adrenaline pumping, heart racing. He knew the next moments could spiral into life or death territory. The first dangerous reaction. Cassandra approached the decoy package, hands steady, but eyes scanning. Then, suddenly, she paused, tilting her head. Something had alerted her. Daniel's heart pounded. This was the first time she had reacted so quickly, so sharply. She wasn't panicking, but she was calculating, adapting, realizing the game had shifted. She opened the package cautiously. Inside were printed documents, a partial copy of her coded journal entries, deliberately left to suggest someone had full knowledge of her plans. Her reaction? A flash of anger, a flicker of fear, a momentary lapse in her control. Daniel had struck the first blow. the life or death stakes. From that moment, everything escalated. Cassandra now realized that whoever was interfering had intelligence, foresight, and nerve. She tightened her movements, began scanning the area obsessively, and even checked her phone obsessively, trying to confirm her suspicions. Daniel had forced her into a defensive position. He knew that as long as he remained calm and deliberate, she would make mistakes. But he also knew the risks. Cassandra was dangerous, ruthless, and unpredictable. Every second now carried potential life or death consequences. One wrong step, one miscalculation, and this confrontation could turn deadly. Testing the limits, Daniel decided to escalate again. He left a message on her office desk, visible and provocative. "I see your moves. Your next step isn't as hidden as you think." Then he observed from a distance. Cassandra's eyes narrowed, scanning the room, her hands twitching slightly as she adjusted her plans. This was her first real indication that Daniel wasn't just reacting, he was manipulating, anticipating, and executing a counter-strategy. Her calm mask was cracking just enough to show the audience, and Daniel, that she was feeling pressure for the first time. Emotional tension. Inside, Daniel's adrenaline surged. He felt fear, excitement, and determination all at once. The stakes had escalated beyond strategy. They were personal, emotional, and dangerous. Cassandra wasn't just a threat to him anymore. She was a symbol of the ruthless cunning he had to overcome. Every move Daniel made now wasn't just survival. It was a test of courage, wits, and nerve. And he knew he couldn't falter. Not now, not ever. Daniel has struck his first major counterblow. Cassandra's suspicions are at a dangerous peak. The tension is explosive. What happens next? Will Daniel be able to maintain his advantage, or has Cassandra already anticipated a counter-move that could put him in real danger? We'll see Cassandra retaliate with a calculated, dangerous strike. Daniel's life, and his entire strategy, will hang in the balance. All right, everyone. Things just went from tense to deadly. Daniel thought he had the upper hand, but Cassandra? She's not someone who sits back and takes interference lightly. Her first counterstrike hits hard, unexpected, and full of danger. Before we continue, if you haven't yet subscribed to Top Core, smash that button now, because the action is about to explode and you cannot miss a second. Cassandra strikes. Cassandra had realized by now that someone was actively blocking her moves. Subtle interference, psychological nudges, and intercepted communications. It was all too precise to be a coincidence. And that realization fueled her ruthlessness. She knew the time had come to escalate. No more subtle hints, no more testing. She had to act, and act decisively. Using her knowledge of Daniel's movements, she laid a trap. She anticipated his vantage point near the Riverside Park and arranged for a staged distraction, a decoy package left in plain sight, designed to lure him in. The first encounter. Daniel noticed immediately. He knew something was off, but he had no idea just how dangerous her plan would be. As he approached the decoy, he saw movement behind the trees. Cassandra, precise, controlled, a dangerous gleam in her eyes. "You're getting bold," she said, her voice low and threatening. "Too bold." Daniel froze for a moment, reading her posture. He realized she was willing to confront him directly, not just with words, but with calculated action. The trap unfolds. Suddenly, Cassandra lunged, not physically, but strategically. She pulled a cord attached to a small mechanism designed to create a loud noise and attract attention from bystanders in the park. It was subtle, almost innocuous, but Daniel knew exactly what she had done. She wanted him exposed, distracted, and forced into a reactive position. His heart raced. Every step now had consequences. Every second counted. Daniel reacts. Daniel's survival instincts kicked in. He ducked behind a nearby tree, heart pounding, eyes scanning for additional traps. He knew she wasn't working alone. Her careful planning suggested accomplices waiting nearby. With adrenaline surging, Daniel pulled out his phone, sending a silent alert to a trusted friend who could act as backup if things spiraled out of control. He had to stay 2 steps ahead, or die. Psychological warfare. Cassandra wasn't done. She began speaking, her words carefully chosen to destabilize him. "You think you understand me, Daniel. You think you're clever. But clever isn't enough." Every word carried weight, emotion, and threat. Daniel could feel his pulse quicken, but he also knew she was giving away information she couldn't hide. He stayed calm, measured, responding with subtle deflection. "Clever isn't my goal, Cassandra. Surviving you is." Her eyes narrowed. She realized he wasn't panicking. That realization? Dangerous for her. Escalation. The trap escalated further. Cassandra signaled from a distance and two accomplices emerged from hidden positions, men and women tasked with securing her exit and overwhelming any interference. Daniel's mind raced. He couldn't confront them head-on. Not yet. He needed leverage, a way to turn her own plan against her. Using the environment, he manipulated shadows, obstacles, and paths to confuse them. He had studied the park's layout extensively, every tree, bench, and pathway memorized from prior observations. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse, and Daniel had to move perfectly. Narrow escape through careful maneuvering, Daniel avoided direct confrontation while simultaneously observing Cassandra's tactics. Her coordination was precise, her strategy ruthless, but he noticed cracks. Hesitation in her signals, small inconsistencies in timing. Those tiny mistakes were enough for him to slip away, disappearing into the park's hidden pathways. Cassandra's frustration was evident. She had lost control just for a moment. But Daniel knew better. She would regroup. She would strike again. And when she did, the stakes would be higher than ever. Emotional tension. This confrontation wasn't just about strategy. It was deeply personal. Daniel felt adrenaline, fear, and anger mix in ways that tested his focus. Every action Cassandra took reminded him of the danger he faced, and yet he was determined to stay alive and win. Cassandra, meanwhile, felt the sting of losing control. Her first direct counterstrike hadn't eliminated Daniel. It had only provoked him. And that provocation? Dangerous. The psychological tension was unbearable. Both knew that in the next encounter, someone might not walk away. And that's where we leave Chapter 13, folks. Cassandra has made her first deadly counterstrike. Daniel has survived, but only barely. The stakes are higher, the danger is real, and the tension is at an all-time peak. Will Daniel be able to anticipate her next strike? Can Cassandra finally regain the upper hand? Or is the life-or-death showdown about to escalate even further? In the next chapter, Chapter 14, High-Stakes Counterplay, Daniel begins a bold offensive maneuver, pushing Cassandra to the edge, and the suspense will reach an explosive climax you won't believe. All right, everyone, buckle up. This is the point where the game goes full throttle. Daniel isn't just defending anymore. He's launching a bold offensive move. Cassandra? She's fully aware now, and her retaliation is sharper, faster, deadlier. Before we dive in, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to follow every moment of this escalating battle. Daniel takes the initiative. After surviving Cassandra's first direct strike, Daniel knew he couldn't remain on the defensive. Waiting for her next move was too dangerous. He needed to act first, predict, disrupt, and corner her. Using the coded diary, the journal entries, and his observations from prior encounters, he began setting a series of traps, not physical ones, but psychological and strategic. Every move he made was designed to expose Cassandra's next steps while protecting himself. The offensive maneuver Daniel carefully leaked subtle information to Cassandra, designed to mislead her. He knew she would react, but he needed her to react in ways that revealed weaknesses. A staged document left in a high-traffic area. A phone message implying he had allies she didn't know about. Subtle changes in his routines that suggested unpredictability. Each move was calculated. Each reaction was observed. He was playing her at her own level, but more carefully, more methodically. Cassandra's escalation. Cassandra wasn't about to back down. She had tasted control, and the loss frustrated her. She quickly regrouped, increasing the intensity of her attacks. Coordinated distractions around Daniel's safe zones, attempts to intercept communications and monitor his movements, direct confrontations in public places, designed to intimidate and destabilize him. Every action was designed to force Daniel into a defensive position, and she expected him to falter. The first confrontation of the day. Daniel spotted her approaching from a distance, her posture precise, her gaze calculating. This wasn't casual, it was intentional. She wanted him to react immediately. He stood his ground, assessing her movements. Daniel understood that a single misstep could be deadly, so he didn't rush. Instead, he forced her into the confrontation on his terms. "You're persistent," he said calmly, voice steady. "I'll give you that." Cassandra's lips curved into a controlled, almost mocking smile. "Persistent? You have no idea what that word really means, Daniel." The tension in the air was electric. Both knew this encounter could spiral into life or death consequences at any second. Psychological warfare intensifies. Daniel deployed subtle tactics to destabilize her. Shifts in his positioning suggested unpredictability. Casual references to her plans, as if he knew them fully. A brief flash of movement designed to trigger a reaction. Cassandra noticed. Her eyes flicked, her posture shifted. She was still composed, but the cracks were showing. Daniel could sense it. She was angry, frustrated, and starting to make small mistakes. The life or death edge. Every move now carried extreme risk. Daniel had to balance bold action with safety. One misjudgment, one delayed reaction, and this encounter could turn deadly. Cassandra made the first aggressive move. She blocked one of his potential escape routes and stepped closer, forcing him to adjust his strategy in real time. Daniel reacted instinctively, dodging a direct threat while subtly guiding her toward a pre-planned position where he could control the environment. It was a deadly game of chess, but now every move could be the last. The stakes skyrocket. Daniel realized he had an opportunity. Cassandra's aggression left her temporarily vulnerable. He could now take the offensive fully, but doing so meant exposing himself to risk. He decided it was worth it. With careful precision, he maneuvered her toward a secluded area he had scouted in advance. He controlled the pace, anticipating her reactions while planting subtle psychological cues to manipulate her decisions. Emotional tension. Inside, Daniel felt the surge of adrenaline, fear, and determination. Every move Cassandra made reminded him of the danger he faced, but also of the need to outsmart her completely. Cassandra, on the other hand, was enraged. Her meticulously crafted plans were being anticipated, her control slipping, and for the first time she was reacting emotionally, not strategically. This emotional imbalance was critical. Daniel could exploit it, but only if he remained calm, measured, and patient. Daniel has fully escalated his offensive strategy. Cassandra's retaliation is intensifying. The life or death stakes are higher than ever. Will Daniel be able to maintain his advantage? Will Cassandra adapt in time to strike back? Or is this confrontation about to spiral into irreversible danger? The turning point. Daniel sets a pivotal trap that could finally force Cassandra into a corner, and the suspense will reach a fever pitch. All right, everyone, get ready. Everything Daniel has been building toward is about to collide with Cassandra's fury. This is where the hidden motives, coded strategies, and life or death stakes come to a head. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to Top Core, because what's coming next is pure chaos, and you do not want to miss a second. The strategic lure. Daniel knew Cassandra was watching, anticipating, and planning her next strike. He also knew that to gain the upper hand, he had to force her hand. Using his knowledge of her routines and diary codes, he set up a subtle but irresistible trap. A false trail suggesting a critical piece of evidence had surfaced. A staged meeting spot, seemingly vulnerable, designed to draw her in. Minor but noticeable errors in his coverage to bait her confidence. Every detail was calculated, every reaction he anticipated. Cassandra takes the bait. Cassandra didn't hesitate. She saw the weakness, and her instincts screamed at her to act. With ruthless precision, she moved toward the staged meeting spot, expecting Daniel to overcommit or reveal himself. As she arrived, Daniel was already there, but hidden, observing, waiting. He could see the subtle signs of her calculation. The slight narrowing of her eyes, the tension in her hands, the controlled yet sharp movements. She believed she was leading the encounter, but Daniel had flipped the game entirely. The psychological reveal. Daniel made his move subtly. He left a trail of clues that forced Cassandra to respond openly. A half-visible document suggesting he had decrypted her full journal. A phone call played over a speaker, making it seem as if he had allies everywhere. Strategic shadows and positioning that suggested he knew her every move. Cassandra's reactions were immediate. She was angry, frustrated, and most importantly, revealing herself. The confrontation. Cassandra finally addressed Daniel directly, her voice a mixture of threat and incredulity. "You think you know everything, don't you? You've been manipulating me, stalking my plans. But you don't understand what's at stake." Daniel stepped from his hiding spot calmly, eyes locked on hers. "I understand enough," he said evenly. "Enough to know that your next move won't work. Enough to know you're cornered." Cassandra's reaction was rapid. She began to speak faster, her words revealing intentions she had never admitted aloud before. Daniel listened, carefully noting each reveal, each coded phrase, and each hint at her next actions. This was it. The turning point. The escalation. Cassandra's frustration and fury surged, her carefully controlled persona cracking. She began making errors in judgment, misreading Daniel's positioning, overestimating her ally's loyalty, rushing to implement a contingency that wasn't fully prepared. Daniel sensed it immediately. He now had the opportunity to take control completely, but he had to act carefully. Any misstep could cost him dearly. Emotional stakes. The tension wasn't just strategic, it was emotional. Daniel realized how personal this had become. Cassandra's anger was raw, spilling over into every word and action. Daniel's determination had shifted from survival to exposing truth, securing justice, and protecting those caught in the crossfire. The audience watching this unfold would feel every heartbeat, every subtle shift in tone, and every emotional tremor as Daniel and Cassandra played their deadly game. Critical revelation. In a crucial moment, Cassandra revealed a piece of her plan she had never shared with anyone. A scheme involving hidden assets, secret contracts, and leverage that could destroy Daniel's reputation and safety. This revelation shocked Daniel, not because he didn't anticipate danger, but because it confirmed just how high the stakes truly were. He could now adjust his strategy with absolute precision. He had insight into her mind, her resources, and her next steps. The life or death edge. With Cassandra's secret fully revealed, the confrontation intensified. Daniel maneuvered subtly to position himself advantageously, anticipating her reactions and preemptively blocking potential attacks, both verbal and physical. Cassandra realized the shift instantly. Her eyes flicked with alarm. Daniel was not just reacting, he was now orchestrating the encounter. The emotional tension reached a fever pitch. Every second could trigger disaster. Every word carried weight. And both Daniel and Cassandra understood that this was no longer a test. It was a full-scale, high-stakes showdown. Daniel has forced Cassandra to reveal her true plans. The tension is at its peak. The stakes are higher than ever. What happens next? Can Daniel leverage this revelation to finally outmaneuver her, or will Cassandra retaliate in a way that could destroy him? The full-on offensive. Daniel begins a bold and decisive move to neutralize Cassandra's threat once and for all, and the suspense will explode like never before. All right, everyone. This is it. Everything Daniel has been building toward is about to explode. He's no longer testing or observing. He's taking full control. Cassandra? She senses the danger, and she's not holding back. Every move, every breath, every second could decide who survives this confrontation. Before we dive in, If you haven't subscribed to Top Core yet, do it now. You cannot miss this chapter. It's pure adrenaline from start to finish. Daniel takes command. After forcing Cassandra to reveal her plans, Daniel knew what he had to do. He couldn't let her regroup, she couldn't anticipate him anymore, and he couldn't hesitate. He began executing a full-on offensive, strategically controlling the environment, moving her toward areas where he had set subtle, tactical advantages, using psychological pressure to destabilize her decision-making, leveraging the secrets she had revealed to him, anticipating her moves before she even thought them. Every step was deliberate, every action precise. This was no longer just survival. It was full-scale counterattack. The first strike, Cassandra, confident as ever, tried to assert control. She lunged toward one of Daniel's carefully monitored paths, intending to corner him. But Daniel had anticipated her. He used her momentum against her, subtly guiding her movements while creating distance between her and potential escape routes. The first strike wasn't physical, it was strategic. Cassandra realized with shock that she was being manipulated. The hunter had become the hunted. High-stakes psychological warfare. Daniel didn't stop at strategy. He pushed into psychological territory, dropping hints that he had allies she didn't know about, suggesting knowledge of her past schemes, eroding her composure, forcing her into split-second decisions with high risks. Each move rattled Cassandra, forcing her to make errors she normally wouldn't make. And Daniel watched, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. Every second now carried life or death stakes. Cassandra fights back. Cassandra wasn't going down quietly. She adapted quickly, switching from intimidation to aggression. She attempted a direct maneuver, trying to trap Daniel in a corner. She called in a minor ally to create a diversion. Her movements became unpredictable, her eyes sharp and her words laced with veiled threats. Daniel had to think fast. Every move she made tested his strategy. Every miscalculation could be fatal. The life or death tension. As the confrontation escalated, the stakes became immediate. Daniel had to move perfectly to avoid detection. Cassandra was adapting, trying to regain control. Both knew one wrong step could end everything. The emotional tension was unbearable. Fear, adrenaline, and determination collided in a storm. Daniel wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting to neutralize a dangerous, calculating enemy. The environment becomes a weapon. Daniel cleverly used his surroundings to gain an advantage. Subtle shadows and pathways to control her movements. Objects positioned to create obstacles and distractions. Controlled distances that forced Cassandra into making aggressive mistakes. Every detail mattered. Every second could tip the balance. The turning moment. In a critical moment, Daniel leveraged a revelation from Cassandra's diary, a coded location and plan she had never fully disclosed. He anticipated her next move perfectly, guiding her into a controlled area where she had no advantage. Her reaction was instantaneous. Shock, then frustration, then raw, almost feral aggression. She realized Daniel wasn't just surviving, he was orchestrating the confrontation entirely. Emotional stakes reach peak. Inside, Daniel's emotions surged. He felt fear, determination, and adrenaline mixing in ways that pushed him to his limits. Cassandra, meanwhile, was unraveling emotionally. She was brilliant, cunning, ruthless, but now she was reacting, and reaction was dangerous. For both of them. This was not just a battle of strategy. It was a battle of endurance, nerve, and willpower. Daniel has launched his full-on offensive. Cassandra is reacting fiercely, every move dripping with danger. The life or death confrontation is at its most intense. What happens next? Will Daniel's strategy succeed? Will Cassandra's adaptability push her past the edge? The unexpected ally. An unforeseen character enters the scene, tipping the balance and escalating suspense even further. All right, everyone. Things just got unpredictable. Daniel has been executing his full-on offensive. Cassandra has been countering aggressively, and now, someone unexpected enters the scene. This is the moment that will change everything. Before we continue, Make sure you subscribe to Top Core, because what happens next is explosive, and you do not want to miss it. A shadow from the past. Daniel didn't anticipate an ally, someone who had quietly observed the chaos from the sidelines, someone with the power to shift the entire confrontation in his favor. Her name was Maya Richardson. A former associate of Cassandra's inner circle, Maya had grown disillusioned with the ruthlessness and greed she'd witnessed. She had her own reasons for staying in the shadows, but now, seeing Cassandra's attack unfold, she knew the time had come to act. Maya wasn't just an ally. She was a wild card, unpredictable, clever, and brave. Entering the battlefield, Maya stepped into the confrontation with caution, aware that one wrong move could get her killed. Her presence was subtle at first, a shadow moving among the trees, a quiet observer taking in Daniel and Cassandra's deadly dance. But her impact was immediate. Cassandra noticed something was off. Her eyes flicked toward the shadow, scanning for the source. That moment of hesitation, just a fraction of a second, was enough. Daniel spotted her too and understood immediately. This was the ally he had needed, someone with insider knowledge of Cassandra's tactics and weaknesses. Shifting the dynamics with Maya now in play, the balance shifted. Daniel and Maya worked silently, their movements coordinated without verbal communication. Maya created diversions, forcing Cassandra to split her attention. Daniel used these distractions to tighten his offensive, predicting her reactions with precision. Together, they controlled the environment, reducing Cassandra's options for retaliation. The life-or-death stakes just intensified. Cassandra had never faced coordinated opposition like this before. Cassandra reacts. Cassandra's instincts screamed danger. She realized her calculations had been disrupted. Someone knew her moves intimately, but it wasn't Daniel acting alone. You brought someone else?" she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "You think that changes anything?" Daniel remained calm, measuring every step. "It does. You underestimated her. And you underestimated me." Her fury escalated, and with it, her aggression. But now she was forced to divide her focus, reacting to two opponents instead of one, a situation she hadn't prepared for. Psychological pressure. Maya and Daniel didn't just attack strategically, they attacked psychologically. Subtle hints dropped by Maya that revealed Cassandra's prior mistakes. Coordinated misdirection that made Cassandra second-guess her decisions. Strategic positioning that created doubt, confusion, and fear in Cassandra's mind. Cassandra was brilliant, but even the smartest could falter when faced with unexpected variables, and she was beginning to crack under the pressure. Escalating conflict. Cassandra's retaliation became even more desperate. She attempted to separate Daniel and Maya, sending subtle threats to manipulate Maya into leaving. Maya held her ground. She had her own reasons, her own courage, and her own determination. She wasn't just a sidekick. She was a force that amplified Daniel's strategy and challenged Cassandra in ways she hadn't predicted. Every move Cassandra made became riskier, more reckless, and more revealing. The life-or-death tension ratcheted even higher. Emotional stakes. The emotional intensity skyrocketed. Daniel felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. Hope that with Maya's help he could finally counter Cassandra. And fear because every move still carried mortal danger. Cassandra, meanwhile, was experiencing a rare vulnerability. Her control, her dominance, her calculated confidence, they were slipping. Rage and desperation took over, and with it came mistakes she couldn't afford. The audience watching this would feel every heartbeat, every shift in tension, every emotional tremor. A tactical advantage. Together, Daniel and Maya executed a coordinated maneuver. Daniel created a false opening, baiting Cassandra toward a specific location. Maya positioned herself to block potential escape routes, ensuring Cassandra's movements were predictable. Both of them leveraged prior intelligence from Cassandra's journal to anticipate reactions perfectly. The trap was set. Cassandra's options dwindled. The confrontation had reached a pivotal moment. One move could decide the outcome entirely. With Maya's arrival, the dynamics have shifted completely. Cassandra is cornered mentally and strategically. Daniel has gained an ally with insider knowledge, and the life or death stakes are higher than ever. What happens next? Will Cassandra find a way out, or will Daniel and Maya finally gain the upper hand? The final gambit, the tension reaches its ultimate peak, with Daniel and Cassandra locked in a battle that will decide who survives and who falls. All right, everyone. This is it. Everything Daniel has worked for, every calculated move, every risk, every near-death moment, it all comes to this. Cassandra is cornered, tensions are at a breaking point, and the suspense? Off the charts. Before we jump in, if you haven't subscribed to Top Core, do it now, because what happens next is pure adrenaline, and missing a second could leave you lost in the chaos. The combi before the storm, the park, the streets, the hidden corners, they all seemed quiet, too quiet, but that calm was deceiving. Every breath Daniel took was measured, every movement deliberate. He knew Cassandra wouldn't go down without fighting back with everything she had. Maya, his unexpected ally, positioned herself strategically. Every shadow, every pathway, every distraction was accounted for. This wasn't just a fight. It was a chessboard of life and death, and the next move could end it all. Cassandra strikes first. Cassandra's fury had reached its peak. She understood she had no room for error, and desperation drove her to action. She lunged, aggressive, calculated, but emotionally unbalanced, a dangerous combination. Daniel dodged swiftly, anticipating her trajectory. He wasn't just surviving, he was using her momentum against her. Every move she made created openings. Every strike carried risk for her as well. Maya intercepted a secondary attack from Cassandra's accomplices, neutralizing them quietly, allowing Daniel to focus solely on Cassandra. Psychological warfare intensifies. This wasn't just physical. Every word exchanged carried razor-sharp intent. "You think you've outsmarted me?" Cassandra hissed, eyes blazing. "You have no idea what I'm capable of," Daniel replied evenly, voice calm, almost detached. "I know exactly what you're capable of, and exactly what it takes to stop you." The psychological pressure was unbearable. Cassandra's mind raced, fury and fear mixing dangerously. Daniel remained composed, forcing her to make mistakes under her own emotional weight. The tactics clash. Every movement was deadly. Daniel used environmental advantage, corners, and obstacles to manipulate the battlefield. Cassandra attempted to force him into confined spaces, hoping to gain the upper hand. Maya's interference provided subtle yet crucial support, keeping Cassandra off balance. Every second felt like a lifetime. Every misstep could be catastrophic. The first critical moment. Cassandra made a bold move. She tried to isolate Daniel, forcing him into a narrow alleyway where she believed she could corner him. But Daniel had anticipated this. Using quick thinking and prior knowledge of her tactics, he countered, maneuvering in a way that left Cassandra momentarily vulnerable. Her eyes widened. She realized he had predicted her move. Rage and fear mixed in a dangerous cocktail. Life or death stakes. At this point, it wasn't just a battle of strategy, it was survival. Daniel could feel the adrenaline pumping, every heartbeat counting, every second critical. Cassandra's desperation led her to take riskier, more aggressive actions. She underestimated Maya's presence and coordination, giving Daniel the advantage he needed. The audience watching this moment would feel the intensity, the high-stakes tension, the emotional gravity, the razor-edge suspense. Daniel executes the gambit. Daniel made his decisive move. Using the vulnerabilities Cassandra had exposed, he executed a precise, multi-step strategy. He guided her toward a location where her options were severely limited. He used her own aggression against her, forcing her into a reactive stance. He subtly cut off escape routes, ensuring she could not recover from her mistakes. Cassandra realized too late that Daniel had orchestrated every detail. The predator had become the hunted, and she was cornered. Emotional explosion. Cassandra's fury erupted. Every word, every movement screamed desperation. You can't stop me. I control everything. Daniel, steady and calm, countered with truth and resolve. You didn't control me, Cassandra. You underestimated courage, planning, and justice. This ends now. The emotional stakes were staggering. For the first time, Cassandra was facing the full consequences of her greed, manipulation, and ruthlessness. The climactic confrontation. The final moments were a blur of calculated maneuvers. Daniel anticipated her final desperate strike, redirecting her momentum safely. Maya intervened at key moments, blocking her allies and providing critical leverage. Cassandra was forced into a defensive position, her options nearly gone. The confrontation reached its peak. Raw emotion, life or death strategy, and sheer suspense collided. Every second felt like the edge of a knife. Daniel has executed the full-on offensive. Cassandra is cornered, desperate, and facing the consequences of her actions. Will Daniel finally neutralize her threat completely? Will Cassandra make one last unexpected move that changes everything? The collapse. The tension will reach its breaking point. Cassandra's world begins to crumble. Daniel seizes control, and emotional and strategic closure inches closer. All right, everyone, hold on tight. Cassandra's empire of manipulation and deceit is about to crumble. Every calculated move she made, every secret she thought safe. It's all coming undone. Daniel has the advantage now, but the stakes are higher than ever. Before we continue, if you haven't subscribed to Top Core, do it now, because the next chapter is the ultimate build-up to the explosive finale. The dominoes fall. Cassandra had spent months building a network of schemes, allies, and contingencies. But Daniel, with Maya's help, had dismantled her plans piece by piece. Her financial leverage was exposed, leaving her vulnerable. Allies who once supported her began to doubt, some defecting entirely. Her carefully controlled environment became a trap she couldn't escape. Every one of her moves that once inspired fear now revealed weakness. Daniel watched, heart pounding, as the walls she had built around herself started to collapse. Cassandra's panic. For the first time, Cassandra's calculated composure faltered. Panic flickered across her eyes as she realized how thoroughly Daniel had anticipated her actions. You can't do this. I control everything, she shouted, voice trembling with desperation. Daniel stepped forward, calm and deliberate. You didn't control anything, Cassandra. Every move you made has been exposed. This is the moment your schemes end. Her fury was tangible, but so was her fear. The emotional intensity was at its peak, and every heartbeat could decide life or death. The strategic advantage. Daniel wasn't just capitalizing on Cassandra's panic. He was systematically dismantling her defenses, exposing her secrets to her closest allies, forcing them to abandon her, highlighting inconsistencies in her plans, making her vulnerable in real time, using her own aggression against her, forcing errors she couldn't recover from. Cassandra's world was unraveling around her. Every door she opened led to a dead end. Every strategy she tried backfired. Maya's critical role. Maya, the unexpected ally, continued to provide subtle but crucial support. She intercepted communications that could have given Cassandra an edge. She provided cover for Daniel to execute his moves safely. Her insider knowledge made Cassandra's reactions predictable, allowing Daniel to stay one step ahead. Together, Daniel and Maya had transformed the confrontation from a desperate battle into a near-complete strategic victory. The emotional peak. Cassandra's desperation transformed into rage, frustration, and even disbelief. The woman who once orchestrated deadly schemes now found herself exposed and vulnerable. Her allies no longer followed her. Her plans were failing. Her reputation, influence, and leverage were crumbling. The emotional stakes were staggering. Daniel, on the other hand, felt a mix of relief, vindication, and adrenaline. He had survived the deadly games, uncovered the truth, and now controlled the outcome. The tipping point. At a critical moment, Daniel confronted Cassandra directly, revealing her failures and laying out the consequences of her actions. "You gambled with everyone's lives, including your own," he said. "Now the gamble ends. Your empire, your schemes, your lies, they're all exposed." Cassandra's reaction was immediate. Anger flared, and she attempted a final, desperate move to reclaim control. But it was too late. Every avenue she could have used to manipulate or escape was blocked. The collapse was total, inevitable, and irreversible. The audience feels the suspense for viewers. This chapter is pure tension. Every second is charged with uncertainty. Every reaction from Cassandra keeps the audience on edge. The combination of strategy, emotion, and desperation creates a roller coaster of suspense. The narrative hits a near peak in suspense, leaving the ultimate resolution to the final showdown and closure. Cassandra's plans are collapsing, Daniel has the upper hand, and the suspense is at its highest. What will happen in the end? Will Daniel finally secure victory? Or will Cassandra find one last twist to shock everyone? The final justice. We reach the explosive conclusion, the resolution of the conflict, the fallout from Cassandra's downfall, and the emotional and strategic closure that wraps this story in unforgettable fashion. All right, everyone. This is it. The moment we've all been waiting for. Daniel has outmaneuvered every trap. Cassandra's schemes are collapsing, and now it's time for the final reckoning. Every heartbeat, every breath, every choice leads to this explosive conclusion. Before we jump in, make sure you subscribe to Top Core, because this is the final chapter, and missing even a second would ruin the full impact. Cassandra's ultimate desperation. Cassandra's fury was uncontainable. She knew her empire had crumbled, her allies had abandoned her, and her plans had been completely exposed. But desperation is dangerous, and Cassandra wasn't ready to surrender. She made a final attempt to regain control. She tried to manipulate one last ally, using threats and promises. She attempted to escape the environment Daniel and Maya had meticulously controlled. She sought to turn the tables with one bold, risky maneuver. For Daniel, this was the critical moment. One misstep, one hesitation, and Cassandra could have turned the tide. But he had anticipated her, every potential contingency, every desperate gambit. The strategic masterstroke, Daniel's strategy, built over weeks of observation, decoding, and careful planning, reached its climax. He revealed the full extent of Cassandra's schemes, exposing her to her former allies, who now realized her deception. Legal authorities, tipped off by carefully collected evidence, were already in motion to secure her arrest. Maya ensured no one could interfere with Daniel's plan, positioning herself to intercept any final aggressive moves. Everything Cassandra had relied on, control, fear, manipulation, was gone. Daniel's victory was no longer just likely, it was inevitable. Cassandra confronted, cornered, and furious. Cassandra finally faced Daniel directly. Her voice was a mixture of rage and disbelief. You think this ends with me?" She spat, hands shaking with fury. "You've only scratched the surface of what I can do." Daniel's eyes were cold but resolute. "No, Cassandra, this ends here. Your manipulation, your lies, your threats, they're finished. Justice isn't something you can cheat." The tension was unbearable. Every word, every glance, every subtle movement was loaded with life or death stakes. At this moment, the story shifts from strategy to emotion. Cassandra's arrogance cracks, revealing fear and vulnerability she rarely displayed. Daniel experiences a surge of vindication, not just for himself, but for everyone affected by Cassandra's schemes. Maya, the unexpected ally, witnesses justice unfold, reinforcing the theme that courage and integrity can overcome even the most ruthless opponents. For the audience, this is the emotional peak. Satisfaction, tension, and triumph all rolled into one. Authorities, acting on the evidence Daniel and Maya had carefully prepared, finally step in. Cassandra's attempts to manipulate the situation fail completely. Legal officers take her into custody, removing her from the environment where she held power. Former allies testify against her, confirming the patterns of deception, manipulation, and threats. Financial institutions freeze her assets, preventing any further exploitation of her schemes. Cassandra is finally powerless. The empire she built on manipulation and fear has collapsed completely. Daniel secures victory. With Cassandra neutralized, Daniel takes control of the situation fully. He consolidates his resources, ensuring that Cassandra can no longer influence anyone else. He restores order and security to his life, confident that his strategy has fully neutralized the threat. Importantly, he also ensures Maya's safety and recognition, rewarding her critical role and bravery. The audience feels the sense of closure. Daniel's victory is not just survival, it's total triumph over deception, greed, and danger. Cassandra's fate. Cassandra, stripped of power and influence, finally confronts reality. Her reputation is ruined, her schemes exposed, her freedom curtailed by the law. For her, the life she thought untouchable is gone. The emotional weight of her downfall is palpable. For viewers, it's a satisfying and dramatic payoff, the classic rise and fall story arc that rewards engagement. Daniel and Maya's triumph. Daniel and Maya stand together, the aftermath of the confrontation settling around them. The stakes were life or death, the tension relentless, and the battle exhausting. But their strategy, courage, and careful execution have triumphed. Daniel has not only survived but achieved justice. Maya's bravery and insight have been recognized, her role cemented in the resolution. Both characters emerge stronger, wiser, and with a clear moral victory. This delivers a dual emotional payoff, justice and heroism, perfect for audience satisfaction. Even as the dust settles, the story leaves the audience thinking, the price of greed and manipulation is ultimate downfall. Courage, intelligence, and integrity can overcome even the most dangerous opponents. Life or death situations reveal character, resilience, and moral strength. The narrative concludes, but the lessons linger, perfect for keeping viewers engaged, inspired, and reflecting long after the video ends. As the camera metaphorically pans out, Daniel looks over the city skyline. Chicago sprawled beneath him, the river glinting in the distance. The danger is gone, but the scars remain. He thinks of the journey, the threats, the betrayals, the desperate fights, and feels a quiet sense of victory, not just for himself, but for everyone who suffered because of Cassandra. The story closes with a final message. Justice can be won, even against overwhelming odds. Courage can change outcomes, and sometimes the most unexpected allies make all the difference. This is the ultimate moment to remind viewers to like, comment, and subscribe. The story has delivered suspense, drama, life or death stakes, and emotional payoffs. The engagement is natural. People want to share, comment on their favorite twists, and discuss the moral lessons.